can start, Bobby.
Yeah, you good. Yeah. Well, listen, I appreciate being here. Madison had a conflict, so she asked me to step in. My name is Bobby Small. I am employed here at Dynamics User Group, or Doug, as the community director, and I've been in the community for about 15, 16 years as a local leader and speaker and committee member and all kinds of things, and joined the community last year as a full-time employee to do what I love the best in life, which is to get to bring content and education and interface with the community like we are today. I'm going to share really quickly just so we can go through a couple of Doug things. Doug's been around. If you haven't been with us before, this is our 30th year in existence as a forum, and then local meetings, regional and national meetings, which we are where we are now. It's a free community. There's a place to sign up here at the end, right here. If you can see that QR code, if you guys can see my share, this is all the stuff you can find out there resource-wise on our website, from forums to webinars, which are really popular. This will be up there as a webinar for folks who can't make it today, can go up and watch it. And we've got conferences coming around regionally as well as nationally. So just check that out if you can, and you're looking to travel next year. We'll be in Vegas in May for our national conference, DynamicsCon. I'm really excited. It's a really beautiful venue out there, and this is an early bird price. Although I will tell you that here in the States, there's this Black Friday thing which happens after Thanksgiving, so there might be a lower price coming up. Maybe if you wait till Friday or Monday here coming up. If you want to join and speak at DynamicsCon, this is the link you can click on to call to submit a session. So if you're interested in speaking, why this is good, it gets you integrated in the community, number one, but you get a free ticket to the conference and a free hotel room. So you want to take a look there if you're interested in speaking. This is a great opportunity to get yourself in to do that. Got a couple of regionals coming up as well. I mentioned that. Just pointing to the top left here, we're excited to get back to Accra. We were there this year at super successful regionals in Africa this year. So excited at the response and the excitement and the passion that everybody showed at these regionals. It was overwhelming to me to see that songs and just joy happening around learning and getting together and networking. That's all I have. I appreciate being here with you to listen to AJ and to listen to everybody else speaking today. I'll turn it over back to you guys and let you guys kick it off.
Thank you, Bobby. That is a brilliant introduction. And AJ, I don't want to take much of your time. And I know AJ is more energetic than I am. And when he takes over, you guys will definitely see it. When you think about Copilot Studio, think about AJ Ansari. And yeah, over to you.
Thank you, Masangi. Thank you, Bobby. It's a pleasure to be here for everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are and where you're joining from. It's such a pleasure to be here for you today. If you were on the phone call just a couple of minutes before Bobby started, Masangi and I were talking about a follow-up to this session. If there is interest, if this is something your community really enjoys, we would be happy to schedule additional sessions. It's not just for Doug in general, but for the Doug Kenya community also. We'd be happy to do specific sessions around a time zone that works best for you so we can continue along this education path. My name is AJ Ansari, and today I'm going to be presenting not just specifically on Copilot Studio, but Copilot Studio for Business Central. I think there is a lot of content out there on the internet around agent building in general, but there usually is not going to be a lot of content around Business Central plus Power Platform or Business Central plus Copilot Studio. And this is where Business Central MVPs typically step in, and we'd like to create content for our community. You do not need a PhD, as I jokingly say. It's to the fact that this is going to be very quick and easy to build. Obviously, in 1 hour, there's a limit to what we can do, but we will try to achieve some meaningful skills or go through some meaningful skills that you'll benefit from. The QR code that you're seeing on my screen, that's the best and quickest way to get a hold of me. That will take you to my LinkedIn profile. By day, I work at an organization called DSWI, where I'm one of the owners and I'm the chief operating officer. We're a Business Central and a Copilot Studio and AI partner. And then I also have as by evening, if you will, a lot of interest in creating content for the community. I have onlycopilotfans.com, which is a website, which is a news tech kind of website specifically around AI, Copilot, and Copilot Studio. Of late, I haven't posted as much comment on the website, although there are some excellent tutorials that you'll find that I may even reference today in my session. Then I have a YouTube channel for Only Copilot fans where you'll find more content that I've been creating lately over there, short videos. One of them is around the Business Central MCP server. Then there's Only BC Fans, which is a podcast for Business Central. You should check that out as well. You can find them where you get your podcast. And there's also a website, onlybcfans.com. So what I want to always highlight before I get started is that we have a lot of wonderful AI and Copilot features within Business Central, and including, you may have heard when you hear agents, the sales order agent, the payables agent. This session is not about one of those. Those are features that live inside of Business Central, experiences that live inside of Business Central. Our goal is specifically around Copilot Studio, and Copilot Studio is an external tool. When you build agents with Copilot Studio, there are a couple of different types. The one we're creating today is going to be called a custom agent or a custom engine agent, and that allows us to deploy this agent in a variety of channels. And it is typically going to be, when you create an agent, you decide who or what persona is going to be using your agents. In our case, we're creating an agent that is going to be usable by employees, by customers, or by vendors. And when we create these agents, our goal is to securely connect them to Business Central data, because by default, they are not connected to Business Central and they don't know any information about it, even though Business Central lives inside of the same tenant as the Copilot Studio agent. You still do need to make an extra connection. And then ultimately, the question is, how do your users access this agent? And this is what we call channels. So what channels are you going to deploy them in? Our goal is going to be to deploy them inside of Teams or M365 Copilot Chat. Although you can deploy them on a website, inside of an app, you can deploy them on Slack, on Facebook, and a variety of other channels that are out there. Now, I will not have a lot of opportunity today to go through the full deployment lifecycle. Although by the end of the session, I might quickly hint on how you can publish and deploy. If you're interested in more, maybe we can do a session around that, or reach out to me and I can help you with some simple deployment techniques as well. And then I'm going to skip some slides. What I want to do is just go to one slide that is important, or two slides that are important, then we'll get started with content. When we create agents within Copilot Studio, there's a light experience. That is not what we're talking about. We're talking about the full experience, which is at copilotstudio.microsoft.com. And when we create these agents, they're centrally managed or manageable. And it has some excellent features, which I'll talk about on the next slide, the orchestration, etc. You have the ability to select your own data model or your foundational LLM, and you can give some excellent instructions to the agent to be able to guide it to do what you need it to do. And then you can choose authentication options as well, especially helpful if you're deploying this for customers who may not live within Microsoft Entra or what was previously called the Azure Active Directory. So what can Copilot Studio do? This is going to be the last slide, and then we'll jump straight into action. Our Copilot Studio agent is predominantly going to work with knowledge sources for getting answers to questions that you might have. Now, it has its own general knowledge because it's an LLM, so it can answer things about how to make an origami duck, or it can tell you who won the Olympics gold medal in a certain discipline, or who won the World Cup. But if you look at most of the LLMs, the general knowledge is going to have a cutoff date, and it's like GPT 5.1 just came out recently. That doesn't mean it's been trained on everything until the date came out. As a matter of fact, GPT 5.1's cutoff date is probably sometime around late 2024 or maybe early 2025. I can't remember the exact date it was, which means if you asked it who won the Super Bowl this year in February, it may not natively know the answer. So when it doesn't know it, it needs to supplement that information with knowledge sources or with public websites. In the agents that we build, our goal is to have knowledge sources that we provide, which are vetted and which are more relevant to our conversation at a much higher level than its own general knowledge. Remember, we're not trying to create our own ChatGPT or Copilot. We are trying to make something specifically to answer the needs of an organization or a specific audience with relevant, accurate, and concise information that will help them do what they need to do. The agents are going to have a combination of tools. These tools are going to have to be orchestrated. Orchestration being the ability to pick what the agent is going to use for what scenario. For anybody who's used Power Automate, you will think that as you look at it, there's a lot of similarities between the two tools. As a matter of fact, there's some flows that are embedded into, or the ability to embed flows into your Copilot Studio agents. Where Power Automate differs from Copilot Studio is that Copilot Studio orchestrates based on descriptions and based on instructions. Description tells it what each tool or what each thing is about, so it knows how to identify them. It's not just a name. The description tells it when and how to use it. And instructions are going to be a list of, quite literally, instructions that you might give to a human. And it will look at those instructions to decide which tools to pick when. And all of that together is done by the AI orchestration, or the brains of your agent. And your agent is then broken down into certain skills, like tools that can allow it to connect, and they all fall under the actions area. Tools that can connect you to Business Central or any variety of connectors that are out there in the Power Platform universe. You can build custom connectors. You can use MCP server tools, and a whole lot more, and flows as well. Then there are topics. Topics allow you to take control of a conversation. Specifically, in a certain scenario, you may say, when the user asks you about this, or this, don't look at the tools, do specifically what I'm telling you to, so you can take control of that conversation. And then triggers allow agents to be autonomous. And so as an autonomous agent, you don't have to be conversing with it in a chat format. It triggers itself almost like a flow in Power Automate. But again, the difference between your flow and your agents are going to be that agents can reason over unpredictable information. So things that you may not have specifically thought out, or people may write an email a certain way, or something may happen that's unexpected. But once the trigger comes in, you can give it some instructions on how it's supposed to comprehend or reason and what it should do in different situations, and then it will understand. And then because it's an LLM underneath, it can also provide responses in natural language and perform a lot of different actions. So this is the wide, kind of spectrum of the things it can do. The slide deck is much longer. So for anybody who's interested, you'll see at the end, I'll have a useful resources slide that I'll bring up. But what I recommend you to look at is github.com/AJ Ansari. Here I've got a variety of different repositories. This Copilot Studio workshop is one that I use for some of the workshops that I do. And you will find there is a file called Slide Deck December 2025. You can download this for the full slide deck experience. There's also going to be a couple of other repositories in here that, as the conversation goes on, I will direct your attention to. One is called My Book of Prompts. I've got some format email HTML instructions and so on and so forth that we'll talk about. And most importantly, by the way, the Only Copilot Fans API mini library, this is going to come in handy, because when we connect to Business Central data, this is something I should talk about really quickly. When we connect to Business Central data, it's no longer using web services like we would use for Power BI and old integrations. It is going to require creation of API pages. So you can either make your own API pages, or you can rely on the Microsoft created library of about 40 to 45 API pages. Sometimes it works great, and there are times where you run into some issues. You can reach out to me separately, and I'll tell you what some of my concerns at times are. So you could build your own API pages with Visual Studio Code, or you can get an API builder tool like the one Eric Hogard has called Simple Object Designer. So let's jump into Copilot Studio, and let's escape my PowerPoint presentation. And that was my slide on where you can get to my repository. So when you are trying to create agents, you may be familiar with Power Automate or Power Apps. You have the make.powerautomate or make.powerapps. For Copilot Studio, it's just copilotstudio.microsoft.com. That's a simple address that you need to know, and that will get you to a home area. If you do not currently have a Copilot Studio license, you can still go to that address. It will trigger the start of a trial. It will need an organizational account. So you will need a Microsoft Work or Home work or school account. It will not work with your Hotmail, Gmail, Outlook.com type of accounts. You can set up a specific developer environment. I've also got on the slide deck instructions on how you can do that with a link to a YouTube video. It's a 2-minute YouTube video that shows you how you can create a Power Platform developer environment to be able to do Copilot Studio agents. So here, just a quick walkthrough of the environment. You see a list of recent agents that you have. You have some flows which can be used across multiple agents that you might create, so their flows can be reusable. It's taking a second. I've got one flow that I can utilize across different things. I've got different types of tools for anybody who's ever built or used the AI Builder and Power Automate or Power Apps. You're familiar with the Prompt Builder or the AI Builder. We have that as a tool that you could use, and there's some other tools as well. Surprisingly, my internet's running just a little bit slower than I'm used to. I don't want to slow everybody down, so we'll just go ahead and go down over here. I want to show you an example of an agent that I had created and I'd used at business at the Directions EMEA conference. Just briefly highlight that, and then we'll go and create a much simpler agent to highlight some important skills. So at Directions EMEA, I showcased a solution that I'll actually be taking to the market, and you may also find a small variant of that open source much later. And so this particular agent is designed to work autonomously. This agent is a first line of support agent, and it works in tandem with an AL solution for a support desk inside of Business Central. And this agent was designed to read incoming emails. And when incoming emails are received, it would take a look at what's going on, what the customer needs, and it would then be able to create a response to what the customer requires by creating a response to a support ticket. And once a support ticket is responded, it would add that information onto the support ticket management system. And so over here, you can see the agent has some knowledge. And because it is responding to support tickets about Business Central, we have hooked it up to a Business Central field guide book by another Microsoft MVP. We've also connected to the Microsoft Learn documentation. And then we've given it some tools, and the tools will allow it to do things like create a support ticket or escalate a support ticket, find customer information, etc. So you see a whole lot of information over here, connections to Business Central. Each of these connections are going to have some information about what the tool does. You can find, it connects to the environment using what very much is the Power Platform connector for Business Central. So I select the environment, the company, the API category, the tool table, and then some custom fields that I might need to populate or some specific fields I absolutely need to make sure we're capturing. And then it gathers all of that information, and then it creates the support ticket inside of Business Central. It also has the ability to send emails on behalf of the agent, also to find some emails on behalf of the agent as they come in, etc. And when it does all of that, then it requires what are called instructions. And the instructions here you will see tell it, look, you're a first level support consultant. You read and you analyze incoming emails. Let me make this a little bit bigger for everybody. And you create or update support cases, and you search relevant sources for possible solutions, and then you respond. And as you go down over here, you can see then I have something called processes. Now, processes are where instructions get absolutely more powerful, because I can break down important things it needs to do into key processes. And each process has a set of steps. So when you create a new support ticket, you can see there are 1, 2, 3, 4 steps, some calling some of the tools specifically, some initializing some variables. And then I tell it things like, invoke the create support ticket tool and populate the required input fields with this information, the submitter email, the case description, and I tell it how it should be populated. And I even tell it things like, you have to create a short description, 248 characters or less. So I'm talking to it like I talk to a human. And I tell it how it should decide if something is critical or so on. And then how does it respond to an email? So I give it some instructions. When the email arrives, read and reason. If it's related to BC, proceed to step 3, otherwise skip. Then run the process that we saw above. Then research a solution, then send an email, and then update the support ticket. So almost how we would teach somebody who's managing a support desk to do these things. And then populate a case number with the support ID, to date with today's date, and so on. And then if you need to escalate, and then how to close a ticket, how to escalate a ticket, et cetera, et cetera. And so all of these together are then tied with a nice little bow called a trigger, which makes us autonomous. And this is going to be running when a support ticket or when a support email arrives. So what I'm going to do is on the side over here, I'm going to create a quick support request. And let's go in, and I have a customer, I have an email address that is tied to a customer inside of Business Central. And so we're going to make something simple. Now, because I'm tied to the knowledge sources that are a book about BC and the Microsoft Learn website, I have to realize that I won't be able to ask specific questions about specific customers. But here I can say support at onlycopilotfans.com. This is my support address that's monitoring emails. And I could say I've got a posting dates error when I try to post a sales invoice. I get an error that the date is outside of my allowed range. Where can I update posting dates? Now, I can ask more complex questions as well, provided it's answered in the documentation. So now, once I send this particular email, it will take a little bit for the email to arrive and for it to process. So in the meantime, what I'll do is I'll see if I've got that other browser open just to see the inbox incoming emails. What I want to do is while that email comes in and it understands that, just quickly show you how it's handled other previous requests. So outlook.office.com. A little typo over here with my address, outlook.office.com. Log in as our support agent. Now, when I see the email has arrived to my support inbox, but I also want to show you how it's handled some previous requests. So Mark Doherty had gotten a purchasing invoice error, and I had some other tickets in the past to give me a list of things and so on. So when these different emails have come in, let's take a look at the types of answers that it's created for the customer. So I'll go back to one that has support case numbers that are tied. So let me actually pick a slightly different one. All right. So in this particular case, this is a wonderful one. So the customer had asked about some information around creating a new stock keeping unit in Business Central. Thank you for reaching out. I understand you need help. These are some answers. It creates this answer by itself by looking at what's in the documentation. It registered the support ticket. And then what happened too is one of the users asked, the user wrote back and said, I want to escalate the support ticket. So then it created an escalation and sent it to Otis on our team, who's our escalation manager. And it told him that he needs to start working on it and that it's been escalated to status B, that it has been, this is the customer. And then it also notified the customer that the ticket has been escalated. So it's capable of doing a lot of things. Now, let's go back and let's actually put this to use. By now, I think the email's in a situation where I can handle it. Because I'm in a testing environment, I don't have it always listening to email. So I will tell it specifically here, why don't you check on the most recent email that just came in? It's 9:22, which is about 2 minutes ago, my time. And look at the right-hand side of the screen, because what is going to happen is it will start showing and reasoning and telling you what it's doing. And so down here, because I'm using a reasoning model, so you can see, look at this. There's an email from this user. This is what's happening. This is the issue. These are the steps it needs to follow. It says, let me start with steps 1, 2, 3, and it will initialize some variables. Now, over here, this is under the hood. It's showing me what's happening. It's researching some knowledge sources, and it's going to try to come up with an answer for the customer. So it found the customer that it needs to create the ticket for. It's going to search for some information. And this entire process might take about 3 to 5 minutes. So let's see how quickly and effectively it will do the job. All right, so it's looked through some of the knowledge sources. All right, now he has the agent has the information to process the support email. All right, it's kind of thinking up what the answer is, what the solution is. And now it's creating the support ticket. You see on the left-hand side, it's telling us the things that it's doing. And now it's going to send the email first with the solution. By the way, it tells it this ticket is not critical because there's no high importance or anything that the user said. Now it's sending an email. You can see under the hood what that email looks like a little bit. We'll also see the email in a second. Now it's going to update the support case telling the Business Central support ticket that it has been sent and it's in progress, and send some information about this, and it should now be wrapping up. Now, at this point in time, what it'll also do is, for if anybody watching this, it will tell it what's been done. So while it's doing that, let's take a quick look at the email that it's sent. So it created a support ticket 48. Thank you for contacting. Check the user setup, check general ledger setup, and does this resolve your issue? And if the user were to say it resolved the issue, it will close out the ticket, and it tells us what's happening. Now let's also go back inside of Business Central, and let's take a look at the support ticket that it did create for this, and what status it left it in. The support ticket ending in 48. And we'll jump into my company, which was, I think, Contoso USA. I like my morning protein shake, so I hope you don't mind me drinking that while we're doing things. Oh, look at that. So here's what happened. It created the support ticket. It shows the date that the support ticket arrived, in progress, who is responsible for it, Contoso support agent. It created a short description. This was the issue, who it came from. And then it tells us some details. Received the support request regarding so on, and it sent an email and get some information. So if you need to, you can always search this support ticket box with what's going on. And if the user sends an email to close the ticket, it will close it. Or if you want to take over and you want to close the ticket, you can also close this over here and marks the ticket closed. So this was an example where the agent can really supplement some of the things you're doing. But let me showcase a much simpler scenario when I'm teaching you how to use some tools. And our scenario is going to require us to connect to Business Central and to retrieve some information like customer details from a table, and then also to be able to send an email to create a record inside of Business Central as well. So we will be able to pull some list of records. We'll be able to create a record inside of Business Central. I'll show the easier way of doing it, and then we'll be able to send an email. So it teaches us some key skills. And along the way, we'll also learn a little bit about some processes and some instructions that we can write. So let's take a look at what this scenario is going to be like. I'm back here on my home screen. There are a couple of ways I can create an agent. I can describe to create it over here. Typically, I go into my create area, which, by the way, will also show me some other agents or templates you can use. I'll click on new agent, and here I can describe and talk to it, and this will help come up with the instructions for my agent. So we're going to create an agent. I will describe and say, I'm creating an agent, or you are an agent. You can use either, or you can also use direct. You are an agent that is specialized in Business Central. Sometimes when I create instructions, the first instruction, I always like to make sure I fully qualify the system that I'm talking about. Thereafter, you can say BC, Business Central. It contextually understands what you're talking about. So you are able to answer questions about system capabilities, functionality, and more from knowledge sources related to Business Central. You are also able to answer questions about data from Business Central, like customers, vendors, items, etc., and create new records in those tables. You are capable of sending emails, be professional and friendly. That last particular statement may seem fairly generic, and why would you have to say it? At the very least, depending on the target audience, you may make an agent that is more professional sounding, more casual sounding. If your target audience is a younger crowd, my 12-year-old daughter, she learned how to build agents. Her agents are full of emojis and Gen Z language because it appeals to her and her crowd size. The backstory, by the way, while it's doing that is she wanted access to ChatGPT, and we decided that is not safe or appropriate for her. Instead, we built her an agent, and she's able to leverage that agent for what she needs to use, and it is tied to specific information that is vetted. Now over here, it will tell me, okay, let's choose a name for your agent, BC Assistant. I'm going to call it, let's call you Doug BC Assistant. The Kenya BC Assistant. Right, and over here, it's created a small playground with some suggested prompts. And now over here, it can ask more and more questions. Now, what I'm going to do in the interest of time is not go through a much longer conversation. I want to show you, though, what it's created on the configure side. So everything that we've done so far will help it create a name, a short human readable description, machine or AI readable instructions that are being created. And then the ability for me to add knowledge sources. I can change the suggested prompts that appear over here, and I can have it do more. If you want it to be in a different language, there are multiple languages supported. You will want to select your language now. If you add languages later, you're going to find it's not going to respect that. It will force you to remain in English for the rest of the agent's life cycle. So you can select from the languages that are available to you right here. I'm going to hit create, and this is going to take us over to the next screen. And a couple of things you're going to notice is it'll show you the default model to use. And there are multiple models that are supported depending on the type of environment you're in. Right now, the default model is GPT 4.1. If you're going to be using MCP tools, if you're familiar with that, MCP being Model Context Protocol, it is a very quick way to make a singular connection into a system and be able to do a lot of information without creating multiple tools. If you saw that support agent closely, you notice that I had 5 or 6 connections into BC. I could have potentially done a lot of that with one connection using the MCP tool. And when we use that to be able to effectively orchestrate MCP situations, we would normally use at least GPT-5. Although in my case, I use Cloud Opus. Cloud Opus is a reasoning agent. It is also capable of doing those same things that I'm talking about. Now, let me first change this at least to GPT-5 Auto. I prefer that over GPT 4.1. Faster responses, a little bit more accurate. Not accurate in terms of information, accurate in terms of constructing an orchestration plan, deciding when to use what. Now, as I come down over here, I can add some knowledge. But let me show you 1 or 2 important things before we start adding knowledge. When we go into our channels, channels will show you where you're going to provision or deploy your agent. By default, we typically deploy them into Teams and M365 Copilot. We would select this, we would give some properties and then deploy it. Actually, we'd first hit the publish button, which creates a package, and then we would deploy it by going to channels. Now, down here, besides that, there's also an area called settings. And this is where you can do things like, disable AI orchestration and take control of the orchestration entirely classically or manually. I don't recommend that unless there's a specific reason. You can have other agents that are connected to agents. So agents that are calling other agents that do specific tasks. A good example would be if you're building some agentic solutions for an entire accounting department. You might have one agent that is specifically responsible for receivables, one for accounts payable, one for bookkeeping stuff, and so on. And you have specific unique instructions for each. And these agents can operate independently, or there can be one agent that orchestrates and passes down commands to and calls the right agent in the right scenario. You can have levels of moderation. This basically controls hallucination and how much liberty it takes. There is, not a lot of control here because this is not meant to be a professional or a pro code tool. This is a low code tool, and so there are some limitations on moderation control. And then down here is you can say, can it answer information from its own general knowledge? It's not a bad idea to let it do that, although you will add specific things. And then if we should answer questions from the web, I usually disable this because I'm not trying to build ChatGPT. I don't want it to look at the web unless there's a specific scenario where I want to enable it. So in most cases, it's disabled, except for 1 or 2 situations where I might need it. And then we can handle some file uploads. You can also use Code Interpreter. If you use this, it will be able to create PDF files or create an Excel file, create a graph or a chart or so on. And so if you want to do that, you can use the Code Interpreter. And this last part is going to allow it to use semantic search. And what that is, there's 2 different types of searches. For those of you who are not familiar, there's something called a lexical search, and there's something called a semantic search. Lexical search uses or searches by words and doesn't understand a meaning. So the word bank, for instance, it will just look for the word bank and not understand if the conversation is financial and it should be looking at a bank as an institution of finance, or if the conversation's about maybe water bodies and rivers and the bank of a river. On the other hand, when you have semantic indexing, it understands context. So based on the conversation, it will not look for banks like credit cards and debit cards and savings accounts and checking accounts. If you're talking about rivers, it will understand and will find more things that are related to rivers and tributaries and lakes and so on, because you're talking about a bank there, because those are the relevant things. So that is what you have. But you have to have at least one user with M365 Copilot paid license before you can do semantic searching or semantic indexing and searching within your tenant. So let's save this. There are a lot of other settings that I could be talking about. So what I would normally do is in a large boot camp, I'd go setting by setting, but these are the most important ones. So first thing that we're going to do is we're going to skill our agent with some knowledge sources. And I'm going to use a knowledge source, which is the Microsoft Learn documents. If you were in my boot camp, I would also tell you about the Microsoft Learn MCP server, which is much faster, but I'm trying to use some important classic skills that you need to understand in agent building. So let's come here and go to add knowledge. And you will see I have the ability to add a public website, SharePoint, Azure AI Search, etc., etc. So let me explain what this is. This is what you may have heard as RAG, or retrieval augmented generation. This is a librarian kind of function. You're connecting it to some knowledge sources, which can be a PDF document that you upload, a Word, Excel, PDF type of documents, something that's on your OneDrive, something that's on SharePoint, something that's a public website that you have chosen and could be your company's website, etc. And when a user asks a question, it will semantically search through these and then generate an answer in a natural language for that particular user. This is not meant for structured data. This is meant more for kind of find, retrieve, answer, analyze, and so on, and kind of give an answer in a more language, written, spoken type of model. So here I'm going to select public websites. I know the Learn Libraries website, but still I can just type in, make sure you see too, learn.microsoft.com/en/us/dynamics365 /business central. Clearly, you can see I've used this a few times. Oh, I think it's business-central. And this is a Business Central documentation website. Now, I'm going to take this particular website and I'll have it look for answers within there about BC. A couple of things you need to know. One, when we say learn.microsoft.com, it will not search www.microsoft.com. It only looks within there. If there are any documents within this that are embedded, if that document or link points to xyz.com, that document will not be looked at. It's only going to look at things within here, and it uses Bing search. So the site has to be indexed by Bing before it's going to be able to retrieve and generate answers from it. So over here, I'm going to take this URL and let's go in and drop it. Immediately, what you're going to see is it tells me the website can't be more than 2 levels deep. So over here, I've got to make some quick changes. I've got to take that last part out, but contextually, I will teach it that it should only look at Business Central information. So I'm going to call this Business Central documentation. And I'm going to say this knowledge source is the Business Central official documentation from Microsoft Learn. The description is much more important than the name. The name is important if I want to reference it in instructions, etc. So we're going to add this to my agent. And I'm going to start asking it questions. Now, because it also has general knowledge, it may decide the better answers coming from general knowledge, but let's go ahead and quickly ask it, how do I create a new fixed asset in Business Central? And what it's going to do is show us under the hood how it's working. So it should now it's searching the knowledge sources. Now, sometimes what I see is it will look through the information faster with some models, and then it shows you what it's doing a little bit later. And it can show me that it's looked at these knowledge sources. Now, in this particular model, I don't quite like how it shows this. I've seen some older models which show with citations as well. If I want to know where you got the answer, because the user won't be seeing all of this, I can say, where did you get this answer from? And I can also teach it in the instructions to always utilize certain citations. So here I propose that it uses its own built-in knowledge. Now, I do not like that it used that. So I wanted to never use its general knowledge when it comes to Business Central fixed assets as an example. And I want to force it to look here. So I can do a little trick here to teach it sometimes how to listen to me about specific situations. Maybe I know its own general knowledge on fixed assets is wrong. So I could create a little thing called a topic, and a topic would allow me to take control of this orchestration. Don't make your own decision. You do what I tell you to do over here. I'll give it a name for the topic. I'm going to call it fixed assets search. And I say this topic is triggered when the user asks about fixed assets in Business Central. And I give it something called add a generative answer node. So these are different nodes. These will probably look a little familiar to people who've used Power Automate. So I should have it under advanced generative answers. And what is the input? What is it answering? So I will take the last question the user asked, which was, how do I create a new fixed asset in Business Central, assuming that was the last thing they had asked. And I want to take that into this topic. And there's a system variable that holds that, whatever was on the last turn. And that is called activity.text. So normally in my boot camps, I say there's 2 or 3 system variables you should learn. Activity.text, which is whatever the message was from the last turn. The bot.name, if you want to reference the email, the bot's name, it's that as a system variable. And the third one is user.email. So if you're creating agents that are being deployed into chat and Teams or M365 Copilot, you already know the user authentication from Entra ID, and you want to reference that email for certain things. So those are 3 important variables that helps you know. But coming back here, now I'm going to say to only use this data source for answering questions about fixed assets. So simple, when this topic is triggered, when we talk about fixed assets, what does it do? It creates a generative answer. And what does it answer? The last question, where does it answer from? This knowledge source. I will save it. Let's ask it a question again. We'll refresh our chat box over here and say, how do I create a new fixed asset in Business Central? Now you see over here, the topic was called. Now it gives me some citations as well, and I can see where it got the answer from. So if I go over here, it will show me the source of the answer. It also shows me that it got some information over here. So now I've learned 2 skills. One, you've learned how do you get information from a knowledge source. The second skill is how do you take control in certain situations where AI isn't doing what you need it to do. Now you could have added more knowledge sources like a SharePoint library or a kind of, from a Dataverse if you wanted to pull information. For anybody who works with Business Central and Dataverse, this will not work for you here because Dataverse for Business Central typically uses virtual tables. That's a most commonly used integration method these days. And this lookup does not support virtual tables. In a structured area, which are called connectors or tools, that's there we have another Dataverse link. And from there, we can pick up Business Central virtual tables if we needed to. By the way, if you're using SharePoint, you have 2 places, one from here and one here. They are different. If you select from over here, these files are going to be uploaded into Dataverse and better semantically indexed. So I recommend using this. It does a better job with quality of answers. And this is where you can select things or documents that are within your SharePoint websites or upload a file, etc. So I can select a file that it should reference in certain cases, and I can give it a name and a description, etc. So we will move from here into tools, and we will quickly create 2 or 3 tools. Let me leave this. Actually, I don't want to wait around for it because this will take a little bit for it to index. And you notice over here, this is indexing the file. Now, when I go into my tools, I can create my tools. So the first one I'll do is a simple email sending tool. And the email sending tool, there are a couple of different types of tools you can use. So I'm going to use Outlook. Now, notice there's Office 365 Outlook. And if I search Outlook, there's also going to be the consumer version. So you want to make sure you're not choosing the consumer version. Actually, right now, it can't find it. Sometimes it does weird things. So I can either, and within Office 365 Outlook, I can either use the connector, which has separate tools, and I would have to pick each one by itself. Send an email, I would have to pick the send an email tool. Retrieve or kind of create or find a list of emails, there will be another one. Create a calendar event, another one. Create a contact, another one. Or I can also use the Office 365 Outlook MCP server, which can make my work a lot easier. So it's called the Email Management MCP server. I usually then do not have the option to configure a lot of things, but it makes the process super easy. So here I will select the email address it's going to use or what connection to use. I'm going to use my supported only Copilot fans, and we can add and configure. There's actually very little you need to do in the MCP server for email management. You just have a name. You choose when it sends emails, is it going to send it as the user who's chatting with the agent or as a specific email address provided by the agent? Now, if I'm making an agent for my company's users, I don't want it to send emails as themselves. I want to send it from my main info at, support at, or whatever my company email address is. So that's why I'm going to choose maker provided credentials. And here, this tool is capable of sending emails, replying to emails, get emails, and so on. And these are some of the skills within it. Now, back in here, let me just find one more information about the fixed assets, right? So this time I can say, send me information about creating a new depreciation book in the fixed assets module in BC. Now, this is going to show you two or three things. One, it's going to orchestrate a plan. It has to do a few things, right? It has to find the information that I'm asking for. Once it finds the information, it has to take the information, then it has to email the information. And this is where AI shows how it's able to generate a multi-step plan. This is a very simple plan, but it is a multi-step plan. So now it's showing me this information. And then it will also start to do I did not say by email. So some, Opus will usually pick up, but in this case, I could also just say, can you email me this information? I'm a little unhappy with this experimental model. It's doing some very weird things. I'm just going to go back to GPT 4.1 for a little bit. And I'll say, can you email me? Because it was repeating itself and repeating and kind of doing some weird stuff there. So if you run into some interesting things, you can always try with a different model, and that's called model playgrounding and testing. And you notice over here, now it called the MCP management tool. It created an email, and it should be sending that out. So if I were to go into my outlook.office.com, or in fact, let's just go into the sent email folder because my inbox is going to have a lot of things. Now this is that email it just created. Oh, look at this. Here are step-by-step instructions for creating fixed assets. It looks like crud. So you will see there's a very simple step I can add, and then we will test it later after we connect it to some Business Central information. So the one simple instruction is always format emails in HTML code. Always add HTML formatting to outbound emails. And I could also tell it to add a signature, etc. As a matter of fact, if you go into my LinkedIn profile, I just did a very nice YouTube post with some more advanced HTML formatting techniques as well. And so it will do much more, add colors, etc. So later, when we add some data from Business Central and ask it to send it, you will see it actually does a better structured job. Now let's connect to Business Central. So within BC as well, I could have connected one by one to different BC tools, or I can use the Business Central MCP server. And so because we have a shorter time span, we're going to leverage the Business Central MCP server because it will let us quickly connect and do multiple things without a lot of work. So how do you connect to a Business Central MCP server? So you have a couple of things you need to do. I'm going to switch to a specific environment where I have a configuration. So let's join into Sandbox v27.1. So for the Business Central MCP server, you need at least version 27.1. That is the November release. And you can't force update that at this point. It is available across everywhere. And so model context protocol configuration, so you could search MCP. And I've created two configurations. A configuration, quite simply, is a name that is going to call a description. You enable dynamic tool mode, which means it's going to be able to look at all the different tools and decide which one to use. And you can either take the standard APIs as tools. These are the ones that are created by Microsoft. You can also have it look at additional objects because this library can only look at 70 tools at a time. So if you have more than 70 API pages, rather, you can have it look at other ones as it needs to. And then you can also choose, are you going to allow it to create, update, or delete things in these different APIs? You can do it API by API, but first you must check this box. So these were the standard APIs from Business Central. And then I also have another one, which is my own API library. If you want to use this, you can download it from my GitHub repository. And so there are a handful of APIs over here. This will allow me to create a customer, modify a customer, but not create a salesperson record, etc. So what I'm going to do over here is I will also allow some records to be created. Let me just open this again. I don't know why. Yep. Not sure why everything had gone away, but I'm going to say allow and modify customers, but not delete them. So this is now what I need to use. So I'm going to go back into my agent and I'm going to go to tools, add a tool, model context protocol. And I will see Business Centrals, which is in preview. This is my connection that I'm going to use. And here, again, I have the ability to say, should it use the credentials of the end user or the credentials of the maker? Here, you will typically want to use the end user credentials because then that way it will respect the permissions of the user. So if the user cannot do something inside the BC user interface, they won't be able to do it through the agent. That is really important. You want to make sure that that is something you do keep in mind, right? And now over here, I will then be able to select important information like the environment. So my sandbox v27.1, the company, my Cronus MCP LLC, and the configuration name. So I will make sure I'm taking this name, case sensitive, and deploy this over here. I will save this. Now I do, it is recommended when you're using the BC MCP tool to not use GPT 4.1. It doesn't do a good job of orchestrating solutions. So what I would do is come back over here, maybe come back to GPT-5 chat or the Cloud Sonnet or one of the other models. Let me try with Cloud Sonnet. I preferred this a little bit more. This is an external model, by the way, which means that your data will leave the Microsoft graph for this specific thing. It is still secure, but it will not remain in here. You can try with 5. For some reason this morning it was giving me some issues. You saw the repetitive answers, so I would just want to try a different model for now. So let's go in, now that I've done it, and let's say, show me a list of customers from Business Central. Now, at this point in time, you will see some interesting behavior. It will ask you to first verify who you are. Ernest, give me about 2 or 3 minutes. I want to finish this. I will actually stay on for about 10 to 15 minutes at the top of the hour for questions. Because of how tight the window is, I want to make sure that I finish up 2 things or 3 things more. Now, once you're authenticated, you don't have to authenticate every single time. Now it's going to go through and it's doing some of its homework here. You will find that the ability for it to search and so on, it goes through a step of semantic lookups based on what you're asking. And so this part is a little bit slower at times, but once it's past this part, it should be faster. Also make sure if it establishes a successful connection to BC. The SharePoint part wasn't connected, but should not ask me for authentication again. Let's see if this will All right. Yeah, I got this today is an interesting morning for my connectivity. But you see now over here, it's searching as list customers top 10, doing a semantic search, cause it to find page 30,009, which is the page for the API pages, standard page for finding customers. Now, this is some background information it shows because this model likes to show some information as to what it's thinking and what it's doing. And you'll notice that when it's done, it stops taking this away and it creates a proper thing. Now, down here, you notice it actually did a nice job of creating a table. If you want to, if sometimes it may not show it as a table, sometimes it may show it as a group or a list. And through instructions, you can also say, you can add an instruction that says always provide customer list as a table, always include these columns, and so on. So if I wanted, for instance, this particular information as a, redisplay this list with just columns for name, salesperson code, and balance due. Exclude customers that have a balance less than $1. So you'll notice now you're asking to do multiple things in one. It should be able to resort this. Now, depending on if you'd asked this the first time, it would have created some of those filters ahead of time. Now, otherwise, here it's re-filtering this information with some arguments, and now it's going to show me this. And if I would like to say send this as an email, to Bob at whoever xyz.com, or if I said to me, it would know who I am. It would email it to me. All right, so now it's going to call the email tool, and in a second, it should be sending that email. It's preparing that body. And this time, notice it's applying HTML formatting because I told it in the instruction that it should use HTML formatting. Now let's look at this. Bob at XYZ, look at this. Now it looks much better. I've got some email that is going out with some details. It tells me what it's done. If I'd also said add a signature, it would have added a signature at the bottom, et cetera, et cetera. So the instruction could have, my instructions can be more detailed with more information. Now let's also create a new customer. I could say create a new customer in Business Central. Now in this particular situation, once again, the tool is going to go through and look at and ask you some fields that may be necessary. So what you might, as you start using models, what you might see is Cloud Sonnet is taking a little bit longer. It's showing you its explanations, but the outcomes are are much better. You may use a different model, which may work faster, but you may see some slightly less reliable outcomes. So this is what you're going to have to balance, and this is where you go through the process of selecting models and testing extensively. So here you can see it's trying a few different things, and it's going to see what needs to happen. I often find when I first use the model, the very first time or first do some of these steps, it takes a little bit longer, and then it comes back and it starts to work much faster afterwards. So it is really thinking this one through. All right, so it says, okay, would you like to provide information for the new customer? And I'd say, you have the customer name is Bob's Tackle Shop. Salesperson code is JO. Customer posting group is domestic. And the credit limit is $5,000. Now, while this should do the job, what I want to show is in another window, while it's handling this, I'm going to show something else that I normally do. And this makes your experience for the user significantly better. So if I go to my list of agents, and we normally do something called an adaptive card. An adaptive card creates a much better experience. It shows the user in a little form that they should populate. And by populating this form, it will quickly take all the things it needs to do. That way, the user doesn't have to imagine or remember which fields they need to be able to populate, which fields should have what. You can even use things that have drop-down values in some cases instead of just having them type a value. In the meantime, though, it is now created, or it's still trying to create this. And yep, I'm really surprised this is working a little slow. So let's do this. It's the top of the hour. While it's finishing up the creating of a customer, let's take any questions that you might have. Masangi, I think somebody's hand had gone up earlier. If we can take that question.
Yeah, but it got raised, lowered pretty quickly. So I'm not sure if
I think
Ernest
Ernesto or
meant.
Ernest, maybe I saw something like that.
Yeah. Anyway, but we can start with, as he unmutes, we can start with the one for Daniel. He was
Okay.
asking if it can work with BC on-prem.
It will work with Business Central on-prem, but not using the MCP server. If you want to utilize Business Central on-prem, you would go to Tools, and under Tools, you can search for Business Central, and you'll see there's a separate connector for Business Central on premises. It requires the same kind of setup that you would need for these are the connectors. It requires the same type of setup that you would need to expose BC for Power BI or the Power Platform, which is an SSL certificate, a cert from a trusted certification authority, a TCA like GoDaddy or whoever your favorite provider is. You will need something along the lines of a fully qualified domain name or an A record, so that it can be referenced for and called from the outside internet and not just from the inside of your BC to the external world. So you'll need some of those things, and that would then allow it to be able to use the Business Central on-premises connector.
Okay.
Other questions?
Sounds good. I think that was the only question. Unless there's someone with a question, you can unmute and ask quickly as we finish the...
Yeah, I'm going to try and see if this model is going to be a little bit faster. That last one was definitely taking a little bit longer than I was hoping for it to.
You've changed to which model?
I went back to 5 Auto. 5, for
Okay.
some reason, the 5 chat, it
Yeah.
was going into a loop. Normally, for simple MCP tools, so let me wrap up with this as I'm talking about model selection. Which models do I typically use and when? For standard, just a simple information knowledge worker situation, GPT 4.1 will work perfectly fine. It is a quick response agent. It does really well. When I work with MCP tools and I'm just using the Business Central, the Office 365 Outlook, etc., GPT-5's auto works fine because it will decide between the standard chat LLM versus the more advanced reasoning LLM. Both of them are going to work pretty good. And then if I go into more reasoning situations, then I use, depending on how complex my needs are, I will either use the Cloud Sonnet 4.5 or Cloud Opus 4.1. 4.1, the Opus engine is the most advanced one in the list of agents or the list of models that I have. And yeah, I'll say one thing. If you guys have 2 minutes, since the MCP server doesn't want to properly create a customer, do you want me to show you the classic way, or are we at time and would you like me to just wrap up?
You can proceed. You can proceed.
Okay, because I feel I wanted to show at least how we can create records, right? When MCP, remember, it is in preview, so every once in a while it won't work the way we expect it to work. So what is the alternative when that doesn't happen? You should have an API page. Microsoft has an API page for customers. I have an API page that I've created as well. So the classic way to do this, I'm going to disable this tool for a second here. And I will make a standard Business Central connection. As a matter of fact, I see that in my suggestions, so we'll just take this one. This is the create a record connector that is used in Power Automate and Power Apps, etc. So we add and we configure. And we'll give it a name called create BC customer. And this part is more important, the description for these types of tools, and say this tool will create a new customer record in Business Central. And so now it knows when somebody says, I want to create a new customer record, it's got to use this. We will, in this case, still use the end user credentials. And then we can populate, like we did the last time, some custom values for the environment that we're going to want to put it in. Let's still just go ahead and do it in that same company, Cronus USA MCP LLC, the category here. But this time, I will either use version 2.0, which is Microsoft's library of API pages, or my own, and my owns are under this particular library group. And for table name, that is the specific API page. And in this case, I'm going to pick my customers page. And at this point, if I want to specifically have it always ask for some fields, I will select them. If I don't, I will be able to choose the fields while the user is entering. The user can just say what they want populated. Otherwise, if I want the name here, I can say the name and say this is populated with the customer's name. And I can add a handful of different fields. I'm just going to add one more field in here, which will be the credit limit. And down here, also dynamically fill this. And this is populated with the credit limit. So let's save this. Just make sure that my connection is good, that it did not. Yep. So let's just reset this connection. That way it won't interrupt my flow of test. Otherwise, like it asked me the last time, it'll ask me, hey, do you want to connect to Business Central? And so on. So now let's go in. Say, I want to create a new customer record. Now, the user could have also just said, I want to create a new customer record with the name so-and-so and this information. It would have done it, but I just want to go ahead and want to show what typically happens if the user doesn't provide this. So what is the name? And I would say the name is Bob's Tackle Shop. Then might ask me what is a credit limit. $55,000. And then the other ones were all optional, so it should not ask me anything else. If I go into Business Central at this point in time and I look at the customers list, I should see my new customer, Bob's Tackle Shop, with $55,000. Now, that is where the adaptive card part that I brought up can be very helpful. If you had an adaptive card, it would have asked with this, and the user would have been able to quickly populate all the things that we need. So there's a YouTube video on that as well under Only Copilot Fans. Search for adaptive cards, and it will show you how you can do that. So, Musangi, if there's an interest, like we said before, in following up and doing some more advanced scenarios, we can. Feel a little bad that today's model unreliability issues took a little bit longer than we would have otherwise spent. But I hope you found this session valuable. Hope you learned some valuable skills. We learned how to send emails, retrieve data, create data, and how to work with knowledge sources and topics. So touched on a little bit of everything in a baptism by fire scenario.
Yeah. We really appreciate. And maybe just a quick one. Are you able to, if you want to connect with custom, how do I put it? Custom extensions, maybe per tenant extensions.
Absolutely. So if you want to create custom extensions, all you have to do is create API pages for that. And so if you're an AL developer, you can create an API page in Visual Studio Code. If you're not an AL developer and you don't have access to one, use the tool called Simple Object Designer. There is a fee for it, but a wonderful example for this particular tool, if I go into my Business Central here, I actually have in here an API page for my support table. So my custom solution support, which you saw for the, not in this particular example, you saw in here my support extension. This is clearly not standard in Business Central. This is all custom, right? And so I created an API page, and then in my toolkit, in my agent, when I connect to it, it will show me add a tool, and we'll go into, find records or whatever, and add and configure. because I have API pages, you will notice that it will let me select from that particular API page. So environment here, let's just go to my sandbox and my company, Contoso. And under here, I have another API library, which is my support. And this contains that custom table. Now, if I had custom fields as well, I would need to make my own API pages. You cannot extend a standard Business Central API page. So you have to make your own, even if you add one more field. So here are support cases, support lines, subscriptions, etc. These are all pulling. This is an API page pulling from my custom table. So this is as simple as that. An API page is created. And once the API page is there for any AL developers in here too, just a quick look at what this, or sorry, non-AL developers, what an API page looks like. There's nothing very, mystical or mysterious about it. Let me just bring up this particular project. I have a lot of different things in here, but support cases API page. It's a simple page construct. It basically is a page type of API and lists some important properties where it should be found under, and then the fields you want to expose. If you have specific code you want to run as well, you can expose that too, but that's a little bit more of an advanced topic. But you do that, you publish this as a solution, and once that solution is in Business Central, you're going to be able to pull data from your custom tables too.
Absolutely, absolutely. This is amazing. Great overview. There are a lot of claps and thank yous for many of the community members here, and definitely I'm sure they'll be able to reach out via your LinkedIn. And definitely we need one more, maybe a more advanced deep dive, probably next year, early next year, and then we'll connect and be able to handle it at that time.
Yeah, my request would be 90 minutes. I think would give us a little bit more time to slow down, and room for some, in case something goes a little off script. But I think 1 hour might be a little tight for some of these topics. So 90 minutes would be ideal.
I agree. I agree as well, because it's practical and we can follow it up slowly and get to understand everything. And also, the request also is we need to start an hour later. I don't know if your time zone is changing anytime soon.
I have no problem.
Yeah,
no, I can do early or late, as long as we know. I mean, an hour early, an hour late, none of those are an issue for me. I'm happy to make time for you.
Absolutely. We need to start like at 7 p.m. our time, because most people will have left work and they'll be ready for the session. Anyway, thank you, AJ. It's great to have you in Kenya online, and we hope to have you physically.
I hope so
if
too.
possible. Yeah, and keep it as part of your plan to consider.
I have it.
There's a great community here, enthusiastic learners, and I'm sure they really enjoyed the session. Sure.
I have a Kenyan connection. My grandfather, as in my paternal grandmother's brother, his wife is from Mombasa, and so there's a Kenyan connection. Yes, wow. We have a Kenyan connection in our family, so maybe someday I'll make my way out there.
You're a Kenyan. You're a Kenyan. If the paternal, you're just a Kenyan. Only that you. Right. We'll come and show you around from the roots where you come from. A former Kenyan.
Absolutely, love to. Absolutely.
Anyway, thank you. Have a good one. I know it's a good day for you. For us, it's good evening, because it's like we can tell you how Tuesday is, like literally.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway,
Patrick has a question.
Or you want us to close? Okay, I think he was just raising his hand, or he was reacting, and then he accidentally raised. But guys, don't be afraid of AJ. People are afraid to speak. I don't know why, but it's okay.
Please don't be.
Yeah, guys. All right. Thank you, AJ, and thank you everyone for joining, and hope to see you soon. Yeah. Have a great one.
Bye for now.
Thank you.